great day. Been a long time in the planning, just so grateful to be here with everybody. I want to thank the men in this church for helping plan this event. It was a lot of work, but today we see through the work. We see men's lives being touched, so it shows it was worth it. I want to thank Danny for speaking. Danny, passing on his apologies, he got called into work last minute. He was supposed to be off, but he had to go into work. So he had to leave. But I had a good joke about him. I was kind of hesitant to put in, so since he's not here, we're going to let it rip. So I want to thank Tom for coming. Like Tom said, he's a really good friend of mine. I'm so glad that he's here, not just because we all got to hear his amazing heart, but because, last night we got to hang out, go out to dinner, because we never see each other. He lives in Buffalo, I live here, so it's basically a Facebook, phone call kind of relationship for the most part, so. And I'm not moving too cold in Buffalo. I don't shovel snow, so I'm not coming down. But, we just had a really good time last night, and a great day so far today. It's an interesting story how Tom and I met. Remember how we met? You don't remember? This is how me and Tom met. He fired me. I was hired by the man that had his position before him to come and speak at his convention, and then that man moved on to a new position, and Tom took his position. So I found a change. I sent an email, and you still want me to come? He was like, oh, no, we're going to be doing things different, and he didn't really know me, which is understandable. So that's how we met. He canned my butt, so. But, he was so gracious and so kind, and we just sat and we talked. And even though he fired me, I was a big boy and I took it, but we just started sharing, and it's just like an instant clicking. You just have out somebody that you just click right away. And we've just been really good friends ever since. So I'm so glad that he can be here today. And I'm glad to be here. Now, if you don't know, I'm Holden. I run Not Your Dad Ministries. And what we do is we provide free resources and teaching for men's groups and churches to take and download from our website, and they can use it in their men group without always having me buying new curriculum, just to call God's place in my life, and we also go out speaking. However, I don't do just men's events. I was kind of laughing when he said, he never wants to go to a women's event, but I go to women's events all the time. We have another ministry, it's called Well-Rounded Women Ministries, that my big sister runs. And we travel around together. She comes to events with me, I go to events with her. So I've been to way more women's events this spring than I ever need to go to. So when I'm in a group of men like this, I appreciate it so much. Because you don't get how different this event is and men's events are from women's events. It is a totally different experience. Here, if I stand here and I scratch myself, if I fart, none of you are going to be offended. If I do that at a women's convention, they get all mad and they just look like, what are you doing? In front of women, you don't do that. It's like, I know I can relax here. If I talk to you guys in the hall, I know I'm safe. It's going to be good. I can say good stuff, you won't be upset, and I don't have to worry about what you're going to say to me. But you go to these women's events, and you would not believe what these women will say to somebody they just met. First of all, you should hear what they say about all you. God's been bad. But anyway, they'll share anything. I was at a convention last fall, and the head of, what's her title now? She's the female him for the whole Women of Purpose Director for the entire Assemblies of God. And I met her, and I was sitting there eating dinner with her, and she started telling this story about when she was pregnant, her water broke, and she wouldn't go to the hospital to give birth to her husband, shaved her legs. I didn't know, first of all, should I just be embarrassed? Should I be quiet? Or should I jump in with what I know? I jump into this conversation, but you just won't believe things. I heard about in vitro fertilization and just all this stuff. I'm like, I'm boy here, don't need to know this, move on, let's keep going. And it's different. Here's a big difference between men's conventions and women's conventions. How many guys here, it's kind of a stupid question, but how many use a bathroom inside the facility today?
Oh Lord, you better.
When you go to a men's event and you're a guy, you don't go in the building. They take every bathroom, male or female, and they make it for women. So they'd only use a bathroom. So, the least they could do in my mind is just hang a key, when the sign says no men allowed. So at least you know where the textile station is, and you can go and get in, and they only use a restroom. So I just love events like this. It's just so good to be with men. I've heard, it's kind of funny, when you're a guy, women will say whatever they want. You have to watch what you say. You can't just go in and say anything you want to at a women's conference. Last year we were selling t-shirts, and I learned very quickly that you never ever suggest a size. You go low. If you think you need one time, you go down a size or two, or else you duck. They don't want to hear it, and it's nasty. And I learned, folks, I didn't learn this at women's convention. I already knew this, but you never say to a woman, "When are you due?" unless you know for sure. I knew that already, but I know for a fact that one of our speakers today has done that. Said to a woman in the grocery store, "When are you due? Congratulations." She's like, "I'm not pregnant, you jerk." I'm not going to out him, but to say it wasn't me and it wasn't Thomas. It's so great to be with God's men. It's so great to share.
Did you show a shot at me, or did you show a shot at Danny?
Danny.
I
threw one at you, you know it.
I know we did it. Don't ask.
Yeah, well, me. Okay, so I want to get serious though. The point today was the ManTour. Oh, whoops, I forgot. Bad me. Tom, he's the head of the Pendle Men's District, was not able to be here. He apologizes, he had another commitment, but he asked if I would mention the conference that he's having in October. It's a yearly event around. Many of us have been there. Out in the lobby, there's some postcards. I'm going to take one, remember the date, but I told him I'd mention it. It's always a good event, so he wished he could have been here, but he just couldn't make it, so just wanted to mention that. Okay, so far, we've gone traveling down this ManTour together. Danny showed us the need. He showed us why we need to be mentored and discipled. We need men coming alongside of us, helping us with our walk with God. And then Tom came and he spoke how to do it. He told us the methods. He showed us what steps to take, how to mentor somebody, how to do it, what to do. And my job is to give the cost. I get to give you all the bill, which nobody likes to be that guy, so I'll like the next session. But we're going to look at what it costs to go on the ManTour. And we're going to look at two different sections. See, I'm a firm believer that every man should be mentoring somebody younger than him, and he should be mentored by somebody older than him. We all need that in our lives. So whether you are 16 or 60, you should have somebody older, if they're still alive, if you're 60, but anyways, influencing your life, and you should have somebody younger. And if you're 16, you think, I'm too young, I can't influence somebody. But if you're 16, I bet your church has a 12-year-old that thinks you are the coolest kid in the world, and he would be loved to be just like you, and he'd love to have you invest in his life. So no matter how old you are, you need to be investing in another person's life, and you need to have another man pouring into you. So we're going to start today looking at the cost. And we're going to start first with what it costs to be discipled. What it costs to have another man mentor you. And then we're going to switch gears and look at what it costs to be a mentor. Okay, so I'm going to make it really easy. Take notes. If you're going to take notes, it's going to be a very easy outline. It's going to be just points, and then I'm going to share a few thoughts. So, number one, the first cost to have another man disciple you. To be a disciple, the first cost is you're gonna need to be teachable. In order to be discipled by another man, you have to be teachable. You have to be able to listen to what they say and learn from their instructions. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 18. And while you turn there, I'm going to just set the stage of what we're talking about here. Most of us here, I'm sure, have heard the story of Moses, 10 Commandments, and God delivered him out of Egypt. Well, that's where we're at in the Bible. We're in the section of the Bible where God set the Jews free from Egypt's slavery. They've come through the Red Sea, God destroyed Egypt, and they are now free men. They're free to serve God, they're free to follow God. Nobody is their boss anymore. And you have to stop and think. Every man that was set free, there was millions of them, but every one of them was born into slavery. None of them ever knew freedom. The men who were free got put into bondage, they had all died. So every man that came out of Egypt, all they knew was being a slave. Having somebody else tell them what to do, having somebody else tell them how to act, what to think, where to go. And now all of a sudden, by the power of God, they were free. Totally different way of life. And as you can imagine, all of a sudden, they didn't know what to do. They were used to somebody saying, do this, do that, go here, go there. So you have a million people who are not used to making decisions, they're not used to being in control of themselves, and all of a sudden they're free. And because of that, the passage we're going to read, we come to see that they had nothing but fight and argument and petty squabble, and just one thing after another broke out. But they didn't know how to solve the problems. They didn't know what to do to fix their issues. So what they would do is what they always did. They went to the person that was leading them. They took every single issue, every single problem, they took it to Moses and said, here, fix it. Tell us what to do. You're the boss. We'll do what you say. So that's where we're going to pick it up at here. You can imagine, this was exhausting for Moses. I mean, all day long, he has a million people coming to him saying, this person said you're a jerk, or this person said that you're awful, and, you know, they borrowed milk and they never gave it back. Just petty, stupid stuff got taken to Moses, and Moses had to tell them what to do. So that's where we're at. We're looking at Exodus chapter 18, verse 13. And this passage, you're going to see Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, observing the situation that Moses is facing. So, let's read that. Okay, the next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw that all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, what is this you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, while all these people stand around you from morning till evening? Moses answered him, because people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it's brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions. And Jethro said, what you're doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear you out. The work's too heavy for you, and you can't handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I'll give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to Him. Teach them His decrees and His instructions, and show them how they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That's going to make your load lighter because they will share it with you. Now, if you do this, and God so commands, you're going to be able to stand the strain, and the people will go home satisfied. Okay, so basically Jethro's telling Moses, hey, listen, son, these people are burning you out. You've got to stop doing things the way you're doing them. You need to set up a new system where somebody else takes care of all these stupid, they brought a cup of sugar and only brought half a cup of sugar back arguments. And when they have a really deep, serious subject that they don't know how to decide, then they bring it to you. And that's going to free you up to hear God, to listen to God, and lead these people the way you're called to lead them. Okay, now Moses has a choice to make. He can either listen to the advice of an older, wiser man and allow him to mentor him, or he can let his pride kick in and he can be an unteachable man. And we're going to look here and see what his decision is. In verse 24. Okay, Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of all the people, over 1,000, hundreds, blah, blah. And they served as judges for the people at all times. Difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decide themselves. Okay, so we see here, Moses was willing to pay the price, to pay the cost, and he was teachable. You know, he listened to the older, wiser man, and because of that, he was able to become the man God called him to be. And he could fulfill the calling God had in his life. All because this older man said, you're in trouble, you're going the wrong way, listen to me. But you know, he could let his pride kick in. He could have like, you know, listen, Pops, I got this. It's all good, let me alone, you know what you're talking about. But he didn't. He said, oh, you know what, you're right, and I'm going to listen. And you know, that's so true to this day. If you want to be mentored and you want to be discipled, you have to be willing to pay the cost and be teachable. You have to listen to what you're taught and accept the instruction and pay the price. Okay, so that's the first cost of being a disciple, is being teachable. Number 2, you need to be humble. That's the second cost. And you know, it kind of goes along with being teachable. It goes with the first cost. Because, you know, if you're not humble, you're not going to be teachable. You have to come to a place where you admit, I don't know everything and I will submit. And when you do that, you can be teachable. If you want to be mentored, you cannot think you know everything. Because it's just not going to work. If you think you know everything, you think you've arrived, you think there's nothing anybody else can teach you, you're never going to grow and the relationship's not going to work. You know, Moses could have said, listen, old man, I got it. We're good. I'm not listening. I'm the boss, God put me in authority, everybody comes to me, I love the attention, I love the praise and the admiration, and I'm not listening to you, I'm doing it my way. But he wasn't. He was humble. And he humbled his will, and he did what he was told to do. And we saw that, in the Cars clips. We watched the clips throughout the sessions. Lightning, on that one scene, he could not make that one turn in the dirt road, remember? He tried it over and over, he just kept wrecking. And it wasn't until, Doc kept saying to him, do this, turn into it, and you'll be able to make it. And he wouldn't listen. He thought he knew everything. He thought Doc was just an old, grumpy old man. He didn't know what he was talking about. But it wasn't until Lightning listened to Doc that we saw at the end of the race that when he got into the grass, he listened to what Doc told him to do. He was humble, he was teachable, and he was able to not only write his course, but he shot to the front of the race. That is why we need to be humble. We have to be willing to listen to what we're taught. The second reason you need to be humble is this. When you are in a mentoring relationship, it is very, very easy to let pride creep in. And I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but it's true. Because all of a sudden you're going from a hurting person with, issues and problems, and all of a sudden there's this man who's investing in you, and he's taking an interest in you, and he's meeting your needs, and he's showing you what it means to be a man. And all of a sudden you'll start thinking thoughts like, wow, I must be important. He cares about me. He's working with me. God must have big plans for me. God's going to use me. And all of a sudden the enemy takes that second, and pride comes in, and at that point, you're done. Because you're no longer at the point where you think you need help. You think you arrived. And I know that sounds crazy. Why would anybody get to that point? But, the enemy that comes against us, he's insane. He uses crazy, stupid tricks, anything he can do to get us trapped. So he'll use pride to make you proud of the relationship. So, the second cost, first you need to be teachable, and second, you need to be humble. The third cost, to be mentored. That's what we're going to look at next. The third cost is probably the cost that most men refuse to pay the most. It's the one area that, when it comes to you handling the bill, it's the point you're like, I'm not paying that cost. And that cost is, you need to be transparent. As men, we don't like that. We don't want to be transparent. We don't want to let somebody else know our issues and our struggles. And we don't want to let people know, man, I have this problem and I can't overcome it. Or, we don't want somebody to know, when I go on the computer, I look at this. Or, I took some money out of the company's money and I kind of embezzled it. You don't want to know these secret sins that are in our lives. But if you're ever going to be mentored and discipled, your life has got to be an open book. If you go to our website, Ministries, we have a resource section. And under there, we have a list of probably like 50 to 100 questions. And they're called our accountability questions. And men can go there, they can make a copy of the list, and they can use it in their mentor-subject relationships. And these questions, they ask questions based on, your walk with God, your family, your business practices, your relationships, how you handle money, every area of a man's life, you try to have some questions. But at the end of that list, the very last question is this: have I been completely honest with my answers? So like when they ask you a question, the last one is you have to do a gut check and say, have I been transparent? Or have I been holding back? Have I been trying to make myself look better than I really am? Or have I been opening up and looking for help and showing myself warts and all? Because until you're willing to show your ugly side, you're not going to be able to get help because nobody's going to know how to help you. So that's the third cost to be discipled. You have to be transparent. Okay, now the fourth cost we're going to look at, being discipled, before we switch gears and look at the cost to be mentored, to be a mentor, is number 4, you have to be hungry. Now, I'm not talking about what we all felt when Tom went on and on and on and on this morning. We were all like, I'm going to go eat, knock it off, Tom. Just kidding. But you have to be spiritually hungry. The goal of mentorship and discipleship is to help us grow into a deeper walk with God. We want to grow, we want to learn more about God. And one way you have to have that hunger if you're going to be mentored and discipled. One of my favorite stories in the whole Bible is the story of the losers. Who here has heard the story of the losers? Who has some headshot up there? I got your attention, all right. The story of the losers is found in 1 Samuel. Let's turn to 1 Samuel 22. I'm going to set the stage again for you. Okay, at this point in the story, we're entering into the life of David. And David was appointed by God to be the next king of Israel after Saul disobeyed God, rejected God. Then then God rejected him as king. So then David was picked to be the next man to follow God. He killed Goliath, and instantly he was a hero. The nation loved him. He became a mighty man in the kingdom. And all of a sudden, the crazy lunatic King Saul couldn't take it, and he decided, no, I'm killing David. I'm not going to have him steal my kingdom. So 2 different times, he tries to kill David. And because of that, David eventually is forced to flee for his life. You can't let somebody keep throwing spears at you. You got to move on eventually. So he leaves the kingdom, and he goes to the Philistines. He's like, I'm going to take residence with the Philistines. I mean, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Saul's always fighting the Philistines, so I'll go live with them. But he gets there, and they won't take him either. Excuse me, I'm sweating. But they don't want David, because for years now, David's been fighting for Saul, killing Philistines. So he's not welcome in Israel. He's not welcome in the Philistines. And there's really nowhere else to go. So David goes, and he lives in a cave in the desert. He leaves, he lives by himself, and he's there, and that's where we're going to find the story of the losers. Let's look at 1 Samuel 22, verse 2. Okay, David escaped the cave of some place that sounds really funny that I'm not going to try and pronounce. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were distressed or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. Okay, so they say misery loves company, right? So all of a sudden you have David is hiding in the cave, and all of a sudden these 400 losers, these guys who have messed up every area of their lives, have a bad reputation, they have no hope, they have no future, they don't know where to go next. They come and they find David. Now I don't think they came to David looking for pity or mercy. I think these men were hungry. They wanted a new way of life. They were sick of the way they were living. They were sick of facing what they've been facing, and they wanted a life as God's child, living for God, serving God, free, happy, and prosperous. And they knew David. David was like the man in Israel. Everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. He was respected. He was a man after God's own heart. And they thought, all right, I'm hungry. I want God. He has God. He's going to teach me. So these 4 men, they pack up their family, and they go to live with David in the cave. So all of a sudden you have David running for his life, and all of a sudden there's not just 1 man in the cave, but there's 401 men living in the cave with their families, and basically they're all living together as a bunch of losers. So that's why I call it the story of the losers. But it doesn't end there. Because David takes these men who are hungry, and they want to learn, and they want to be mentored, and they want to be discipled, and they eat up every ounce of what David pours into them. And if you turn to 2 Samuel, we're not going to look at the passage, but I'm just going to tell you, David takes these men and he trains them, and he leads them into battle, he teaches them how to live, he gives them a whole new way of life. And in 2 Samuel, the bunch of losers, the malcontents, are given the title, the mighty men in God's kingdom. And I'm going to read some of the things these men did. They were David's mighty men. 1 man fought and killed 800 Philistines in one battle. 1 against 800, and he won. That's a mighty man. Another stood his ground when the rest of Israel retreated during a battle. And the Bible says he fought so hard that the sword froze to his hand. He fought so badly he couldn't loosen his grip on the sword. It froze his fingers. But he defeated the entire army single-handedly. Another one, he wasn't alone in his bravery. Another one, it said, went to battle. He led the troops in the battle with the Philistines. And it said everybody in the Israelite army retreated, but he stood his ground, and he defeated thousands of soldiers himself. Other men became skilled at defeating giants. Remember that was what David's big claim to glory was. He killed Goliath, and apparently he taught them how to kill giants. And it says 1 man fought a giant with a spear in him. He grabbed the spear from the giant, and he killed the giant with his own spear. David took these men, these losers, these people nobody wanted and nobody respected, and he poured into them, and they became the dudes, the mighty men in God's kingdom, and nobody could touch them. Not their friends, not their enemies, nobody. And it was all because they were hungry. They wanted it. They wanted it more than they wanted their next breath. They were not going to let anything keep them bound the way they were living. They were going to get help. And if they had to go get David to teach them, then he was going to be their mentor, and he was going to show them how they were supposed to live. So that's the 4th cost. You have to be hungry. Guys, we have to have the same spiritual hunger. This hunger is going to cause a desire in us to be discipled. and be mentored and have other men pour in our lives. I encourage everybody, ask God, I want a man in my life to come alongside me and pour himself into me. I see that he is a mighty man in your kingdom, and I want to be just like him. And ask God to send such a man to mentor you, to disciple you, and to pour into your life. Because guys, that's what it's about. And that is a cost we have to be willing to pay. We have to want it and hunger more than anything else in life. More than success, fame, fortune, relaxation, play. Nothing can come before our hunger for wanting to love and serve God and have another man teach us how to do it. Okay, so that's the 4 costs of what it costs to be mentored by another man. You have to be teachable, you have to be humble, you have to be transparent, and you have to be hungry. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears. We're going to look at the other side of the coin. What does it cost to be a mentor to another man? Because remember, it's not enough for you just to want to be mentored, but you need to be influencing another man. Whatever you learn and put into practice in your life, your job in God's kingdom is to teach the same thing to somebody else. Because none of this is about me or about you or any of us. It's all about changing and then helping others. And if your attitude is, God changed me so I can have a happy life and I'm going to enjoy my life, you're missing the point. Because the point is, God changed me, you revolutionized my life, now help me have somebody else's life revolutionized in the same way. Your desire has to be to give out. So we're going to look at 5 costs that it costs to be a mentor to another man. Okay, the first cost is also one of the costs to be a mentoree, and that is you need to be humble. Humility is a huge price that you have to pay if you want to be a mentor. Okay, now why do I say that? Okay, we're going to do a little test here. Let's all stop and think a minute. How many of you here can sit here and think of a man in your life who has influenced you positively? He's been a good role model. You can look back and say, he made a difference in my life. It could be a father, it could be a teacher, it could be an uncle, a sports captain, anybody, a youth pastor, anybody. Can you all think of a man like that? There's somebody in your life that, he made a difference. Well, as you're thinking about that person, probably a smile's on your face, and there's sparkle in your eye, and probably if I knew that man's name, I said something bad about him, you'd come up here and you'd prop me one. Because you love him and you admire him so much. He's your guy, he's your leader, and you just respect him. Okay, you gotta have that image in your head, you know what you're thinking about a person? Now, if you start mentoring somebody else, they're gonna feel the exact same way about you. They're going to idolize you. They're going to treat you like royalty. They're going to hang on every word you say. You're going to do no wrong in their eyes. And if I ever said something bad about you and they heard it, I better duck too, because they'll come after me to defend you. I've been like that with men in my life, and I've seen other men be the same way. And you need to be humble, because the minute you start buying into your own press and what they're saying about you, you're done. You can't be an effective mentor if you believe the hype and you believe what they are saying about you because they love and respect you so much. You have to always keep in mind where you came from and what God set you free. And think about what a wreck you were and you are where you are because of the grace of God. Because God's not going to share His glory with anybody, especially me and you. We're just humans with errors and mistakes. And if God uses you to influence another man, great, but you can't buy into your own press. You have to stay humble. Okay, another reason is that you have to be humble is this. Your job as a mentor is to help another man grow spiritually. And that's the point of it all, right? You want to help him grow spiritually. Recently, I heard a quote that, since I read it, I just grabbed it and I've run with it. I've been using it. My sister's sick of hearing it. I use it so much. And that quote is this. My generation's ceiling is the next generation's floor. Let me say that again. My generation's ceiling is the next generation's floor. And basically what that means is my job, my desire in life needs to be to get the people that I'm working with and mentoring to outgrow me spiritually. I don't just want them to grow spiritually. I want them outgrowing and soaring over me. I want them conquering mountains that I couldn't conquer. I want them going farther for God than I ever thought possible in my life. And if you're not humble, you're not going to be able to have that attitude. The other day I was watching TV. I was watching the Heat lose, which really ticked me off, but another story altogether. And they put in this commercial of Cam Newton talking to a little boy. I don't know if anybody saw it before. And the little boy, he's encouraging the little boy, you need to exercise, you need to get in shape. And the little boy's like, well, if I do, I get to be a football player like you. He's like, yeah, you can do that. And the kid's like, well, I get to go to college and win a high school. He's like, sure, you can do that. And the kid's like, well, I get drafted first in the pick and play for the Panthers. And Cam starts to hesitate. He's like, sure, I guess. And the kid's like, and then can I be the starter? You can be my backup? And Cam's like, what do you mean? I ain't going to be your backup. And the kid goes, and then if the fans will forget all about me and I'll be their favorite player. And Cam's like, well, no, I don't want that. And the little boy goes, and then your mom, I'm going to be your mom's favorite player. She's going to love me more than she loves you. And Cam's just like, stunned. And then the next clip, they show the little kid going like this. He goes, I'm just loosening up. Like, he's getting ready, he's going to conquer the world. And it's funny. It's a cute commercial that makes you laugh. But in reality, in real life, Cam Newton's thing should have been, yes, you can outdo me. You can replace me. You can go further. My mama can love you more than you because I want to see the next generation go further than I ever went. That is true humility. When you can get to the place where you don't care if somebody outdoes you because you know it's all for the glory of God. So that's the first cost to be a mentor, is humility. I apologize, I'm sweating. It is hot up here. Okay, the second cost is you need to be vulnerable. And all God's men said, yuck. Nobody likes the V word. Sounds like a chick word, right? You guys don't use that word. But, we need to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to show not only our good sides, but also our bad sides. And I'll go so far as to say we should be more willing to show our bad sides. We have to let them see us, warts and all. We saw that in the car clips again. Until Lightning, he wouldn't listen to anything Doc told him until he found out who Doc was. And when Doc was open and vulnerable and showed Lightning who he was and his issues and his hurts and his pains, it wasn't until then that Lightning got it. And he understood. And he was willing to listen. And at the end of the race, we see it got through. Because, he went back and he pushed the king across the finish line. And what did he say? Anybody remember what Lightning said?
It's just another empty cup.
Yes, an old grumpy car once told me it's just another cup. Until Doc was open and honest and shared his hurts and his pains, Lightning never got that lesson. But once he saw where Doc came from and the problems he had and the hurts, he could see what Doc did wrong, the mistakes, and he could avoid them and change. It's kind of like if I'm going to drive down the road here and I hit a huge pothole and it blows all four of my tires, I'm going to get out of the car and wave to other people, don't hit these potholes. Well, if I'm going to do that, why am I going to do the same thing for another younger man? If I know that in my life having debt caused me not to be able to do everything God wanted me to do, why wouldn't I tell a younger man, don't go into debt, don't have financial issues, let God control your finances so you can become all God wants you to be? If I know that anger and rage turn to hate, turn to broken relationships in my life, why wouldn't I tell another younger man, deal with your issues? Don't let the rage turn to hate. Don't destroy your life. And that's what we need to do. We need to be willing to show them our warts and all and say, this is the mistake I made. You don't have to make the same mistake. And that's how they get to go above and beyond this. And that's how our Generation Steelers becomes their for. Because they're not going to struggle with what we struggled for. They're going to go past it and keep moving forward. So, until we're willing to be humble and we're willing to be vulnerable, it's not going to work. Okay, the third cost. The third cost is you need to be willing to serve. Okay, you need to be willing to serve others. True discipleship stems from a servant's heart. God has never called one single man in history to ever be a master. Even Jesus, his beloved son, he didn't send to earth to be a lord or a master. He sent him to be a servant. God calls every one of us to serve. Tom, come here a minute. Alright, I'm going to use Tom as an example, and if you're enjoying this message, after this, you're never going to get him here to speak again because he's going to kill me. But, oh, good. Okay, first, No, that's right. All right.
59 pages.
Yeah, we're page 25, almost there. Okay, now, Tom's going to kill me for saying this, but he is the most humble man I know. When he said he'd wash your feet, he literally would. I remember the first time I ever met Tom was right after he fired me. Excuse me. He still graciously allowed me to come to the convention and just set up a table advertising my ministry. And I drove up the long drive up 81 through the trees and nothing else. It was cool because I got to go and hang out with Tom. But I got there, and it was the Friday night he was scheduled to be the speaker. It was the first year he was running the convention. He had just been appointed this big, prestigious position. He was the big deal speaker. And you'd expect to find him, inside either reveling in the glory and having all the guys praise him and love him. Because as soon as I got there, I could see the guys admired him and loved him. They would do whatever they asked him to do. But you know where I found Tom at when I got there? He wasn't inside basking in the glory. He wasn't off by himself. I found him out in the streets of Binghamton, unloading cars and carrying luggage for the other people coming to his convention. That is a willingness to serve. Man. He could have been inside. He could have asked any one of 100 men to do that for him. And they would have done it out of love and thrill that he singled them out to ask. But he didn't. He went out and he unloaded cars and he carried them in and he served. He wasn't done. Thank you. I mentioned he fired me, by the way. And I'm so thankful for men like Tom in my life. And he's not the only one. I've had so many other men that God used in my life that demonstrated to me how to be a servant. And now God has me in ministry. I try to make my goal in life, in my ministry, to serve other people. I don't try and get people to serve me, but I try to have the same heart of service because I learned it from men like Tom, that that's how you mentor, that's how you change lives, by being a servant, not a master. So, it's nice talking to you. He's going to kill me and I'll come to the funeral. Number 4. Yeah, he will. He's already mad at me for an offering, so. Alright. Now, the 4th cost. And this is an odd cost, but yet it's a cost nonetheless. So now I get suspenseful and won't make you wait while I take a sip. Hold on. Thank you, doctor. Okay. The 4th cost is you need to be thick-skinned. Okay, what does that mean? You need to be thick-skinned to be a mentor. Why would that be part of having a mentor and disciple relationship? Well, there's a phrase that every man who wants to be a mentor to another man needs to learn. If you don't write down any other thing that I say today, and if you forget everything, remember this one phrase. And the phrase is this: hurting people hurt people. I'll say that again. Hurting people hurt people. And when you're working with a guy and you're mentoring him and you're discipling, he's going to have hurt and he's going to have pain. And his natural tendency is going to be to lash out at you. And he's going to lash out and attack. And you have to be the bigger man and take it on the chin and show him love. I remember when I was a teenager, longer ago than you think, but I remember when I was a teenager, I was a mess. I was abusive, I was angry, I was filled with rage. I would flip out at the slightest slight or appearance of a slight. I put my fist through doors and we kind of have that in common, but it's not a good thing to have in common. But anyways, during my teenage years, I had an issue with a pastor at a church I went to. It wasn't this pastor, so don't anybody worry, you don't know who it is. And I had a perceived slight. It wasn't a slight, but to my broken, damaged heart, it was. And I sent this pastor the world's nastiest letter. To this day, it makes me cringe to think about. I am so ashamed. I called his character, his integrity, his call to ministry, everything into question. I attacked him. It's shameful what I wrote to this man in this letter, out of my hurt and my pain. And then, years later, God called me into ministry. He started making me deal with my anger and my rage, and he brought this memory back to my mind. I'm like, oh, I don't want to think about that. But it happened, and I had to make it right. So what I did is I wrote this pastor another letter. And I apologized, and I said, God showed me I wasn't angry with you. I was furious with God. And you were his son, you were his servant, serving him, and I put my anger on God onto you, and I'm sorry, and I'm begging you to forgive me. And the first letter I wrote, he never responded. He never sent me anything. But the letter of apology, he wrote me back, and he said, I forgive you, but you were forgiven 10 years ago when you did it. Because I knew you were hurting, man, and you had issues, and it's been forgiven for all these years. I forgive you, and he was so gracious, and he was so kind, and I never forgot that, ever. Okay, fast forward, about 10 years later. I know if that was right, going over 10 years, but anyway. I get a letter in the mail from a man that I'm working with, and this letter ripped me up and down. He tore me a new one. No, it wasn't Tom this time. But he called my character into question, my relationship with God, if I even was a Christian. He ripped me up, down, around, and through. And he carboned the email to my pastor at that time. So not only was the insult on my character, but it was a public assault on my character. And I'll be honest, I swallowed really hard at first. It hurt. But instantly, God reminded me of what happened years ago where I did the same thing. And God showed me the love and the forgiveness that was shown to me. And God said, remember, hurting people hurt people. And because of that, I was able to be the one to forgive. And I was the one that could say, understand, you're forgiven, it's not a big deal. And if you're going to have a mentor relationship with another man, you have to have thick skin like that. You have to take it on the chin, realize they're not really mad at me, but they are dying inside with pain. And they can't take the pain, and it has to go somewhere, and they unleash it to me. And instead of responding in anger, you respond in love. Recently I was pumping gas. They play music when you're pumping gas. Somehow have commercials and some new music. Well, I heard this song, and the lyrics were, "Will you love me even with my dark side?" And I started thinking, and it wasn't a Christian song, but yet it was so biblically accurate. We need to love them even with their dark side, and still show them the love of God. And just take it on the chin, realize hurting people hurt people, and we need to be thick-skinned. So if you're going to be a mentor, that is a tough lesson, but it's one you have to learn. It's a cost you have to be willing to pay. All right, I know you're all sick of listening to me, so we're on the last point here, number 5. So far we saw you need to be thick-skinned, you need to be willing to serve, you need to be... I forgot my own points, that's great. You need to be vulnerable, you need to be humble. Number 5, the 5th cost. The final cost of being a mentor is you have to be willing to sacrifice. Proverbs says, greater love has no man than this, than he lay down his life for a friend. And guys, this is especially true in the mentoring relationship. When you're mentoring another man, you have got to lay your life down for him. You have to do whatever he asks and you have to sacrifice. What do I mean by sacrifice? Well, it means, you have to be willing to flip off the big game when he calls for the problem saying, I'm struggling, I'm hurting, I need you. You have to turn off watching your heat get killed and listen to what he has to say and work with him. You have to be willing to take his call at 3 o'clock, whether it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. Sometimes they call in the middle of the night with problems. You still have to be sacrificing and sacrifice your sleep to be able to help them. It means you have to schedule your time so you can get together with them and talk and find out what's going on in your life. And Tom said, you have to see face to face. You can see the eyes. And that takes a sacrifice of your time to do it. It means you have to sacrifice some of your money and pick up the check when you get together. You should always be sticking with them with the bill. You should pick it up as the mature in the relationship and bless them as you work with them. You have to be willing to sacrifice your time, your wishes, your desires, everything about you has to be sacrificed for their time and their wishes and their desires. And that totally goes against everyone in this room's nature. Because we all have a sinful nature that is not geared to sacrificing for somebody else. We're geared to getting what we want. But luckily for us, every one of us has a big brother who has shown us how to do it. Because you stop to think about it, Jesus sacrificed everything. He sacrificed everything for us. He was God, deity, sitting at the right hand of his Father. And he gave that up and sacrificed to come to earth for us. He sacrificed every single minute of every day that he was on earth, talking and speaking and ministering and reaching men and women and just giving everything up for them. Sleep, everything was a sacrifice as he served them. He made the ultimate sacrifice when a pure, holy, sinless man died on the cross in our place. because he knew we need to be reconciled to his Father, and he wanted to make that sacrifice for every one of us. So, if our big brother's going to do it for us, we need to do it for other people. That's the biggest cost. You have to sacrifice yourself. Okay, so we've seen the 5 costs to be a mentor. And want to yell them out? I remember them this time. I'm just going to see if you guys remember. What's number 1? Number 2? Number 3? Number 4? Thick skin. Number 5?
Sacrifice.
Okay, and what are the 4 costs to be mentored? Have another man invest in you. Teachable. Humility. Transparent. Hungry. I know that's not like you want to go eat dinner and when you shut up. I mean, it's you're hungry for God. Okay, so those are the costs. I've laid them out. I am a firm believer in counting the cost. I never want to see anybody jump into something head first without stopping and counting the cost. And that's why we did this last session. We had 2 sessions of you need to disciple, you need to mentor, we get you all geared up, but I don't want you to make a commitment that you're not going to be able to keep. Because, God, here's your commitment. And if you're going to make a commitment, you've got to follow through. So that's why we've laid out today what the cost is to be mentored and to be mentored by somebody else.